The third book in the action-packed murder mystery series is out. It's called Beneath DC, and that's a Brandon Hall mystery. And it's brought to us by a local author, John Theo Jr., and he's joining me today. And you brought us a variety of books. And the really cool thing about all of this, too, is that they're set in this area. Talk about the different themes from the different books and what folks are going to learn in Beneath DC.
Sure. The three books tie together kind of like a three-act play. Brandon Hall is the protagonist. He's an ex-military farmer, which is very not traditional. Most traditional PI books, the protagonist is like an ex-cop turned PI, but this private investigator, he does like insurance fraud cases and cattle and other farming type insurance cases. And he, in the first book, ends up taking on a murder case of a local senator. His son is murdered, and ends up stumbling into some Washington, D.C. type case storylines. And I wrote that back in 2017 and was published in 18, and that tied into like Antifa and ironically stuff that's going on today. And that storyline tied into this globalist antagonist character that we never met. And that character, that bad guy, carried into the second book. And then finally in the third book is when Brandon, the protagonist, comes face to face with that globalist. And in the second book, one of the storylines has to do with human trafficking, which is, again, a global, worldwide syndicate. I come to find out it's one of the top three worst industries in the world behind drugs and arms. And Brandon, again, because of our proximity to DC, this farmer PI ends up stumbling into that and works to help solve a case, which has a bigger macro level storyline going on. And in the third book, he comes, like I said, face to face with this bad guy. And turns out this bad guy has his tendrils into all things in DC, in the swamp, behind the whole veneer of DC and the political system up there. And all three books kind of tie together. And it's, like I said, it has a unique juxtaposition where you could never do this in any other part of the country because of Washington, D.C. and its proximity to Virginia. So I feel like I have this unique ability to write a very realistic fiction story.
And you address obviously some hard-hitting issues, but you do this from a very clean point of view, don't you?
Yes, I write from a Christian point of view. All my books are clean, family-friendly, no gratuitous sex, no swearing, but they do have a lot of violence in them. I don't write from a very they're very raw in some ways, and yeah, that's the only way I can really describe it. They're clean, family friendly, but they do have some very realistic components. A lot of the storylines are pulled right from the headlines, and they are so very realistic storylines.
Right. And you also taught writing, so you also know how to tell a story and keep the audience engaged, don't you?
Yes, I taught screenwriting at the college level as well. So, and the beauty of that is very different from prose writing. In screenwriting, you're taught to, unless the writing reveals character or moves the story along, you have to cut it out. And that's not the case really with prose. In prose, you can kind of ramble on and meander around for 50 to 100 pages if you want. But I've took a lot of those lessons and applied them to my prose writing as well. So most people will, who like action-packed, fast-paced stories, will really enjoy these books. You don't find a lot of wandering in my writing. It's several hundred pages, and once you get going, you're strapped in and you're along for the ride.
Oh, I like that. And why Brandon Hall? What do you think people will like about him?
From the feedback I've seen on Amazon and some of the reviews is a great piece of feedback was that it was a perfect description of an imperfect person. I think a lot of times in the past, people have portrayed Christians as being like a 10 out of a 10, and they don't have any flaws. My characters have a lot of flaws. They're imperfect people. The husband and wife argue. They're struggling through life just like everyone else, except they lean on God when they are in trouble, when they need help. And he's not afraid to show weakness. He's has his own fears. He struggles just like everyone else, but he tries to do the right thing. He loves his wife. He's faithful to his wife, and he's trying to just live a godly life and just make it through life, and just trying to do the right thing. And he's not perfect. I think that's what people like most about him. He's just not perfect.
Definitely. You want a character that's interesting and relatable too. And speaking of this book and all your other ones, where can folks find them and find more information about you?
It's available in ebook and paperback on Amazon.com, also on JohnTheo.com as well.